Second half of the URC regular season starts this weekend. For those teams who haven't yet made it into the playoff places, they need to start making a move soon. My name's Mark. Let's talk rugby. This weekend's fixtures, a bit of an in-between kind of period. You know, the European fixtures have pool stages just finished. The Six Nations just around the corner. And this is a brilliant chance for teams, as I said, to start making a move. You know, other teams might not be as strong as maybe you would expect. And yeah, for teams who haven't had the best start to the season, get a win or two here and get a little bit of momentum for, you know, later on in the season as well. And I always say it doesn't matter what round it is, who, you know, which players are available. If you get 4 or 5 points for a win in the URC in a round like this round or next week, then those 4 or 5 points still count the same as any other weekend. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through the fixtures and talk about, you know, how the teams are doing so far this season, and, you know, especially kind of the last 7 games, and then make a prediction for each of them. So first of all, on Friday we actually have 3 games all kicking off at the same time. Again, I don't know why we don't have URC games on Sunday, because I would absolutely watch, like, even a double header, you know, early afternoon and kind of late afternoon, evening. I would absolutely watch 2 games of rugby on a Sunday. But I guess it's for the travelling fans. It's kind of a bit more difficult getting there and getting home on Sunday. But yeah, if they ever think, you know, that they want to do it, I'd be absolutely on board with it. Now, so Friday games, the first game is Ospreys versus Lions. And, you know, this is kind of an interesting one because you got Ospreys had a bit of a resurgence over the kind of Christmas period. And then you have the Lions who, you know, very poor start to the season on the European tour, went home to South Africa, got a few wins under their belts as well. And, you know, at the minute, you've got the Lions have made their way up to 7th place in the table and Ospreys in 9th. So 2 teams who recently have been on the up, but obviously the momentum of one of them is going to be broken in this game. And, you know, we look at how the teams have gone in the last 7. So Ospreys, 3 wins and a draw out of their 7, and Lions 4 wins from their 7. So very close in terms of, you know, the record in the last 7. Ospreys win against Zebre, then they lost against Glasgow, then a draw against the Dragons, which would have been a bit of a disappointment. But looking at the Dragons' recent form, it kind of makes a bit more sense. You know, Dragons have been another team on the up. Then lost against Edinburgh. That was a narrow one by 2 points. Lost to Munster. And then they won the last 2 in this competition. Beat the Scarlets by 7 points and beat Cardiff by 11. And then the Lions then lost to Zebre by 2 points. Lost to Benetton by 26. Then they go back to South Africa to beat the Scarlets by 11. They beat Ulster by 18. And then they beat the Bulls. And that was at Loftus as well by 10. Then they lose to the Stormers. And then they beat the Sharks by a point. So you see, you know, all their wins coming in South Africa so far this year, and that kind of informs us, I think, in terms of this game as well. You know, Ospreys, as I said, on the up a little bit. The Lions did not do all that well the last time they come up to Europe. They're coming at least in better form this time, but I think they're going to struggle again. So because of that, I'm going to go for an Ospreys win in that one. Okay, let me find the next one here. If my mouse will cooperate. What are you doing? Come on. There we go. Okay. Next game then is Edinburgh versus Vodacom Bulls. Also at 7:45. This one is at the Hive Stadium. Sorry, I didn't mention the last one. Ospreys Lions is at the Electric Brewery Field. Yeah, but Edinburgh versus Vodacom Bulls at the Hive. And if we have a look here, Sorry, my mouse, like it's definitely not run out of battery because I changed the battery only recently, but it's not behaving anyway. But on to this one. So Edinburgh in slightly better form than the Bulls, but the Bulls have been poor for most of the season. But at the same time, both teams aren't that far off the playoffs. Edinburgh in 10th on 17 points and Bulls in 11th on 16 points. And when you consider that Benetton are in 8th place on 19 points, both teams could potentially be in those playoff places with a win in this game, depending on other results, obviously. But in their last 7, Edinburgh won 3 of their 7, the Bulls just 2, and they're on a run of 4 defeats as well. So Edinburgh, they lost to Munster, then beat Benetton well by 43 points, lost to Cardiff, then they beat Ospreys by 2 points, lost to Glasgow by 12 points, then lost to Glasgow by 18 points, and then they beat Benetton by a point. The Bulls, in contrast, they beat Leinster by 8 points. That seems a long time ago now, honestly, for them. Lost to Ulster by 21. Then, I think that was 28-7, that one. Beat Connacht by a point, and that was the last win in this competition. They lost to Glasgow by 9, Lions by 10, the Sharks by 9, and then the Stormers by 5. So, not a good run in South Africa for them. And in contrast, I think, to the Lions, the Bulls might, prefer to be getting out of South Africa this round, and maybe a change of venue will help them out a little bit. Edinburgh, as we know, are a very up and down team now, but they're coming off, the back of getting hammered by Bath in the Champions Cup, and the Bulls are coming off the back of a very good win in Pau, and decent defence as well at the end of that game. Like, we know the Bulls' defence has been very poor this season, and because of that, I'm almost siding towards the Bulls for this one. But I think in the case of the Bulls at the moment for this season, I think they have to show, for me at least, they have to show that they're capable of getting results before I'm going to back them. So because of that, even though, again, Edinburgh are very up and down and could easily lose this one, I'm going to go for Edinburgh to just about edge it. Okay, and then the third game on Friday is Munster versus Dragons, 7:45 kickoff. This is in Virgin Media Park, so it's down in Cork. Right. So Munster, got knocked out of the Champions Cup by losing to Castres at home. They're going to be smarting because of that. Dragons, as I said, have been on a good run of form, both in the URC and in Europe as well. And that's great to see too from them, because they've been, kind of basement dwellers in this league for too long, for my mind. But, it's difficult now going over there where Munster are expecting some kind of reaction after kind of, not being able to get it done in Europe. But Munster, they've won 4 of the last 7. The Dragons have won 2 of the last 7 with a draw in there as well. But, the last 2, Munster have lost 2 on the bounce in the URC, and the Dragons have won 1 of their last 2, but they've also won 2 of the last 3. So Munster, they run the last 7. They beat Edinburgh by a point. Then they beat Leinster by 17. That, for me, that was their peak this year, and they've just been on a downward spiral since then. Beat Connacht by 2 points, lost to Stormers by 6. They beat Ospreys by 16, lost to Leinster by 5, and then lost to Ulster by 25. Dragons, then they lost to Glasgow by 49, lost to Cardiff by 7, drew against the Ospreys, lost to Leinster by 14. That was a decent performance from them. It kind of signalled that something was coming from them, and we saw that then. They beat Connacht by 20 points, lost to Cardiff narrowly by 3 points, and then they beat the Scarlets by 23. So the Dragons on, their best run in a long time, if you combine the Challenge Cup and the URC, but still going over to Munster and getting something over there might be just a little bit beyond them. So I'm going to go for a Munster win in that one. Next, then we're into the Saturday games. So we have the 3 o'clock kickoff is Scarlets versus Ulster at Parky Scarlets. And with this one, we have contrasting form, I would say. Like Scarlets, just 2 wins from their last 7, and Ulster 5 wins from the last 7. And Scarlets, those 2 wins are actually, for them was a bit of resurgence. They actually lifted themselves off the bottom of the table, but then poor form has put them back down there. So the Scarlets at the minute in 16th place, and Ulster up there in 4th place. So big contrast in where these 2 teams are sitting in the league at the minute. And Scarlets, their run of the last 7, lost to Stormers by 34. Then they lost to the Lions by 11. They lost to the Sharks by 10. Then they beat Glasgow by 23. And they beat Cardiff by 4. And after those 2 results, you were thinking, Scarlets have found a bit of form. Let's see where they go from here. And it was just back down from there. So they lost to Ospreys by 7 and then the Dragons by 23. And Ulster then, in their run, beat the Bulls by 21. Then they beat the Sharks by 8. Lost to the Lions by 18. Beat Benetton by 34. Lost to Leinster by 4. Beat Connacht by 5. And then beat Munster by 25. So they're in a decent run of form. And they're also off the back of having beaten Stade Francais in a kind of winner-takes-all game for their pool in the Challenge Cup as well. So and they were 26-0 up at half time and had to kind of weather a comeback in the second half where they didn't score a point and it was 26-19. So that second half performance would certainly be a worry in this game, especially if Scarlets get them set, their noses in front, and maybe get like a score or 2 ahead. Then Ulster are going to have to really dig deep. They've shown this year though that they can produce second half performances to win games as well. So they do have that in the locker, but it's more, I think, a case of, compared, if you look at last week's result, it's more about being more ruthless, I think, when you're ahead, and just, being able to pile on the points and also keep the pressure on the opposition. Don't slack off and don't let them back into the game. And that's kind of the challenge for Ulster, I think, in this game, is if they're the ones that get themselves in a lead, can they just keep on pulling away, keep that scoreboard ticking over in that second half? So looking at this, I think, given the form of both teams, I've got to go for an Ulster win in this one. Okay, now we're on to the next game, and that is Connacht versus Leinster, 5:30 kickoff at the Dexcom Stadium. And, Connacht still looking for a win in an Interpro, which is what the Irish derbies are called over here. And, it's like, 2 years or something since they've gotten a win, like the 1st of January 2024, I think they beat Munster. And since then, they haven't won a single one. So, they'll obviously be up for this, but Leinster finding a little bit of form, still nowhere near what we expect from Leinster, but they are starting to kind of click a little bit. But again, more to come from them. But Connacht, they had a big win there in the Challenge Cup, but still, it's for them, it's consistency. We know they can hit the heights, they can pile on a score at times, but we also know that they can concede a big score too. they haven't kind of found themselves, they haven't really made themselves hard to beat in terms of just week in, week out in the URC and in Europe as well. And they've won just one of the last 7. Leinster, as they're climbing back up the table, currently in 5th with Connacht down in 13th. They've won 6 of the last 7. So Connacht, their run was a loss to Cardiff. Then they lost to the Bulls by a point, lost to Munster by 2 points. They beat the Sharks by 27. Then they lost to the Dragons by 20 points, lost to Ulster by 5 points, and then lost to Leinster by 35 points. And in Leinster, they beat the Sharks by 26, lost to Munster by 17, beat Zebre by 24, beat the Dragons by 14, beat Ulster by 4, beat Munster by 5, and then beat Connacht by 35. So, Leinster as well have kind of, especially the first team, the team that normally plays in the Champions Cup, have, had to come from behind in the last 20 minutes in games and get wins, and they've been able to do that. And that's something that the first team, the Leinster first team, have struggled with. Generally, the URC team, which, is the team that plays when all of those guys are away with the Ireland squad, have been decent at that. So, going to be interested to see who the personnel are for this and which team it is that's there, and whether Connacht can actually put them under any kind of pressure for this game as well. But given, again, the contrasting form of the two teams, I've got to go for a Leinster win in that one. Okay, on to the next one then. Pull it up here. So next then we have DHL Stormers against Hollywoodbets Sharks, 5:30 kickoff at the DHL Stadium. So in this one, Stormers, they've won all of the games, 8 out of 8 in the URC, so obviously won the last 7 as well. The Sharks, and they're obviously top of the table too. The Sharks in 14th place, with only Zebre and Scarlets below them in the table, have won 2 of the last 7. They've got a draw in there as well. The Stormers' run of the last 7 has been beat Ospreys by 16, beat Scarlets by 34, beat Zebre by 18, beat Benetton by 15, they beat Munster by 6, beat Lions by 7, and then beat the Bulls by 5. So a bit closer in the last few games. They also, like the first game of the season, that they beat Leinster 35-0. They have had one defeat though this season, because they sent a very weakened side to, it was Harlequins, right? And got absolutely hammered in the Champions Cup. And because of that, then they ended up finishing 3rd in the pool when they were on to basically challenge Leinster for top of that pool. So I'm not sure what the thinking was behind that. But now they've been beaten once this season. It feels like it won't be actually too long now before they suffer their first defeat in the URC as well. Can the Sharks do that? Well, they've obviously got the personnel. You look at that Sharks team, you think, well, how are they always so low in the URC? Why are they not up there with the Stormers at the top of the table, with like the Stormers, Glasgow, Cardiff, etc. up there? Why can't they be up there with the personnel they have? But they just never seem to turn up in the URC, other than the odd occasion, and nowhere near as consistent really. Like they've only made one, I think. Yeah, they've only made the playoffs once, I think, or maybe more, but certainly once in recent years. And yeah, it's very disappointing looking at the players that they have. But in their run, they drew against the Dragons, then lost to Leinster, they lost to Ulster, then they beat Scarlets by 10, lost to Connacht by 27, they beat the Bulls by 9, and then they lost to the Lions by a point. So this one going to the Stormers to try to get a win. Again, because it is a South African derby, certainly you would expect the players to be up for it. But the Stormers players are going to be up for 2, and they'll want to keep that record going as long as they can, the unbeaten record in the URC. So I'm going to go for a Stormers win in that one. Okay, so let me get this. There we go. Okay, so next then we have Zebre versus Glasgow Warriors, 7:45 kickoff. This is at the Stadio Sergio Lanfranchi and in Parma. And yeah, so we got Glasgow, who are sitting second in the table. Zebre, who are second last in the table. Zebre, who had a brilliant start to the season and then completely fell away. And you see that, like, they haven't won at all in their last 7 games. Which is disappointing. They basically won the first 2 games of the season. Looked like, oh God, like Zebre actually going to be competitive this year, and then nothing from them since then. They've done okay in Europe. They got themselves into the knockout stages, but Glasgow have been exceptional in Europe themselves. The perfect 20 points, so 4 bonus point wins in their pool and finishing second seeds, and only defending champions Bordeaux ahead of them on that. So, if Zebre were looking towards European form to give them a bit of a G up, will Glasgow have that in spades themselves? And Glasgow, of their last 7, they've won 6 of them as well. So they're in brilliant form on both fronts at the minute. But if we look at the Zebre run, so they lost to Ospreys by 24, lost to Stormers by 18, lost to Leinster by 24, lost to Cardiff by 15, lost to Benetton by 6, then Benetton by 14, and then Glasgow by 37. So very few close games even in that run from them, and that's a bit of an issue too, because one of the things that they had kind of got going for them in the last 2 seasons was they were hard to beat at home, and they could often, be coming down the finishing straight the last 5 minutes or so with just 1 score between the teams, but haven't really been on that kind of form recently in this competition. Glasgow then beat Dragons by 49, then Ospreys by 25. Followed that up with a 9-point win against the Bulls. Then the loss against Scarlets by 23. For me, that's an absolute aberration from them. Then they beat Edinburgh by 12, Edinburgh by 18, and then Zebre by 37 last time out as well. And they'd be looking at, maybe a similar margin here in this one, honestly. So I'm going to go for a Glasgow win in that one. And then we're on to the final game, which is Cardiff versus Benetton, 7:45 kickoff at the Cardiff Arms Park. And this one is 3rd in the league versus 8th in the league. Previous years, you would have given Benetton at least a decent chance of getting something out of the game, but Cardiff have been in brilliant form. Benetton not in the best of form. It did pick up over the holiday period a little bit for them, but they're still kind of below par for me. And we look at that run of 7 for each. So Cardiff, they've won 5 of the last 7. Benetton just 3 of the last 7. And then Cardiff's run has been 4 wins in a row. So first Connacht by 6, then Dragons by 7, then Edinburgh by 1, and Zebre by 15. Then a loss to Scarlets by 4 points, beat the Dragons by 3 points, and beat the Ospreys by 11. So you can see that a lot of the games have been close, but they've gotten over the line in most of those close games as well. Benetton then in their run beat Lions by 26. Then they lost to Edinburgh by 43, Stormers by 15, and Ulster by 34. Then a couple of wins on the trot, beat Zebre by 6, and then beat Zebre again by 14, and then they lost to Edinburgh by 1. So, the fact that of those 3 wins that they've had in their last 7, the 2 of them have come against Zebre, and we've already discussed how poor Zebre's form has been. It doesn't really bode well, I think, for Benetton. And because of that, I'm going to go for a Cardiff win. And because of that, for them to stay, in that top 3. And it's great to see as well, because last year, it was kind of round about this time of the year that they really started falling away, because they had a brilliant start to the season, last year before Christmas, and then just completely fell away in the second half of the season. But for now, at least, they're maintaining it, and I think they're going to maintain it again in this one. Okay, so that's a look ahead to the weekend's URC. I've also got, I'm going to record now a video about the Irish squad for the Six Nations as well. I don't know which one will come out first, but both, at least if you're watching this on Thursday, both of them should be up on the channel. But that's it from me, and I'll see you guys on the next video.